And just taking a moment to notice the earth below you. You might notice it with your sits bones, or your back might be being supported by the back of a chair or couch. So noticing that that too is earth. Perhaps your feet are on the ground. Noticing what happens when you know that you're supported. That you didn't have to do anything at all to deserve this support. It's just here. And then take a minute to notice where the breath is most easily noticed in the body. So it might be at the nostrils, at the chest, the belly, or even the back body. We're going to pay attention to impermanence. So noticing what's slightly different in this breath and in the next breath. Maybe there's a difference in temperature, or maybe one breath is shorter than the other. Maybe you notice the breath in slightly different places. Maybe you feel it more on the left side, and then you start noticing, oh, I can feel it on the right side too now. Noticing impermanence of breath. And paying attention to sound. So we're not so much concerned about what the sound is. So we won't be noticing like birds or traffic. What we're really just noticing is sound. And notice how it's changing. How just like the breath, sound is impermanent. Using your breath to anchor you. so that you can stay in this moment as best as you can. Notice how it gets quieter, the sound, and then louder. And lastly, let's hang out in the body a little bit and notice the changing sensations. So being with the body as a whole, allowing the mind to rest on the body, just as the body rests on the cushion. And noticing the dancing sensations of aliveness. So you might notice some aliveness in your belly, and then in your foot, and then in your hand. The mind can very easily get caught where it hurts. And so if there's a lot of pain, you can just bow to that pain and intentionally move your attention elsewhere. Noticing the impermanence of bodily sensations. Thank you for your practice. Can you turn your attention from inwards to outwards? Even though we've been on Zoom for like, what, 5, 6 years, I still don't understand how to use a bell on Zoom. Whenever I ring it, it doesn't, you can't hear it. So I just, for some reason, it won't stick in my mind how to do it. So bear with me. Okay. Um, oh, Twinkle, you're already recording. Amazing. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to talk about letting go today. And in order to do that, oh, I forgot to tell you who I am. I'm not scattered at all. Hi, I'm Arti. I use they, them pronouns. And I'm here on the lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples in Vancouver. I've been a part of this Sangha for I think about 5 years. This is the very first Sangha I ever taught at, which has a nice place in my heart. And thank you all for coming today. So I'm going to talk about letting go. Um, and in order to do that, we just need to have a little bit of a lens on some basic Buddhist principles. So for those of you who are steeped in Buddhism, you can show up with beginner's mind. Okay, so what is freedom in a Buddhist sense? Well, it's liberation from greed, hatred, and delusion. And the Buddha talks about that as the embodiment of freedom is viraga, also known as dispassion. So viraga in Bali, which is the language of the Buddha, and then dispassion in English. And I remember the first time I heard the word dispassion, and I was like, I am too much of a Leo for that word. Like, I am a passionate person. What does this dispassion word mean? And I asked a teacher, and they said, oh, it's not what you think it means. It doesn't mean not having a zest for life. In fact, I have a huge zest for the Dharma. I have a deep and profound love for the Dharma. It's actually about, it just means not clinging. It means not romanticizing what's here and not demonizing what's here, just seeing it clearly as it is. So, the first noble truth is that things are hard, suffering happens. And I really love the way that my teacher, Rachel Lewis, my teacher, mentor, friend, Rachel Lewis, talks about the second noble truth. So the first noble truth is things are hard, suffering exists. And the way that she describes the second noble truth is that we usually make it harder. And the way we usually make it harder is that we cling, right? Clinging is really the source of our suffering. And so when we can hold something with dispassion, not demonizing it, so not pushing it away with aversion and not clinging to it, um, then we suffer less. And so this is like, oh, that seems simple. Great. Okay, turn towards what's difficult. Don't cling on to what feels really good. That seems easy. But as we know, it's very hard. Um, yeah, I don't think any of us are arahants here today. So clearly, none of us have mastered this skill, you know. Okay. So the word nibbana, which is the word for enlightenment in Bali, you might know it as nirvana in Sanskrit, or the anglicized version of nirvana, which the Indian auntie in me is like, absolutely not nirvana. So the word nirvana or nibbana means to extinguish, to extinguish. So we're extinguishing clinging, you know. And what happens when we extinguish clinging is we stop this samsara, this cycle of samsara, this cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, which is essentially what suffering is. We stop that. Okay, so we suffer. One of the main ways that we like to cling is that we love arguing with impermanence, right? We just love it. We're like, some of us can see sometimes that it causes us suffering, and yet we're always arguing with it. Like intellectually, we know the seasons change, the leaves fall off trees, things are changing constantly. But do we really know it in an embodied way? Because so often we're fighting it, right? Yeah, we like to push away what doesn't, I mean, we don't like to. It's just natural. It's what our little soft, I'm thinking of that Mary Oliver poem of our soft bodies, you know, it's what our soft bodies do. They're just like, oh, this feels bad. I'm gonna push away. This feels good. I want more of it. Like it's so tender and sweet that we try to take care of ourselves in this way. But there's a way that is much more liberating that we can take care of ourselves. Um, okay. So, when we argue with impermanence and we contract against the ebbs and flows of impermanence, we suffer. So our practice is not so much about trying to contract around the waves, but riding the waves. Embodying freedom is less about doing and more about resting back and noticing. And this is extremely radical in capitalism, right? Capitalism is all about go, 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 do more, get more things done. And our practice is actually about, oh, can I rest back? Can I rest back and notice? So less about interfering and more about, and less about, oh, I've got to get free, you know, that kind of energy, and more about just watching the body and in the heart mind. And we do that with curiosity and with compassion. So some schools of Buddhism talk about Buddha nature, which is this idea that we are inherently good and we're inherently I said, talk about impermanence, the impermanence of Zoom for sure. Um, okay, just gonna change my view because I do not like looking at my big head. That feels weird. Okay, here we go. Yes, curiosity and compassion is where I was. Right. So we're inherently free. We've got this seed of freedom, and then we have all of these onion layers of all of this stuff. So in kind of Western world, we might talk about that as trauma, right? As like the trauma of li living in colonialism, of being ripped away from land, being ripped away from each other in hyper-individualism, of our intergenerational trauma, our personal traumas, like so many things. And in Buddhism, we encapsulate all of that in this really just handy phrase called causes and conditions. So it's basically like it's a mystery. There's lots of stuff. We don't really know why. We're not super concerned about the why. There's just a lot of stuff that shows up that is the onion layers on top of the seed of Buddha nature. So that's our conditioning. And very often our conditioning says to us, you know how we get rid of those onion layers is we try to force them off. We try to peel them off by like being like, you should have done this, right? But the Buddhist way is to just notice what's here, to just notice what does this onion layer feel like in the body? Can I be present with it? And can I notice it with curiosity and compassion? Otherwise known as attunement, right? That's what attunement is somebody who's listening to you with curiosity and compassion. So that's what we're doing to ourselves. We're attuning to ourselves. And then over time, one layer peels and another layer peels and another layer peels, and we get more free. Unfortunately, everything is impermanent, including this knowing. You know, there are many times where you might sit down to have a sit or to go on a walking meditation, and you're like, what do I do again? How do I do this thing? That happens all the time because even our insights are impermanent. So that's something that can be laughed about, you know? And as we practice more and more and more, it gets more ingrained. Oh, yeah, this is how you do this thing. Just watching with curiosity and compassion. Okay. So embodying freedom isn't about gaining freedom. It's not like, oh, freedom's over there and I've got to cling to it. Because as we know, second noble truth, clinging causes suffering. It's really about letting go. This is the resting back part of it, letting go of greed, hatred, and delusion so that we can feel into that freedom seed that is already and always here. It is our birthright. So one of the, I think pretty sure it's Thich Nhat Hanh who talks about the mind as a garden. So it's a metaphor of the garden. So we weed out the greed, hatred, and delusion, but we can also plant wholesome seeds that bear fruit. And I'll talk a little bit more about this metaphor later. Yeah. Okay. So what do we mean by letting go? I've been talking a lot about it, but what does that actually mean? So the Buddha, this is a quote from the Buddha, and he was talking to Moggallana, who is one of his chief disciples, so a monk who was his chief disciple. So he says to Moggallana, no thing is fit to be clung to. When a monk has learned that no thing is fit to be clung to, he fully knows everything. By fully knowing everything, he comprehends everything. When fully comprehending everything, whatever feeling he experiences, be it pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, he, with regard to these feelings, abides contemplating impermanence, contemplating dispassion, contemplating cessation, contemplating relinquishment. When thus abiding, he is not attached to anything in the world. Without attachment, he does not hanker, and without hankering, he reaches within himself complete extinction of craving. Ceased has rebirthed, lived is the holy life, done is the task. There is no more of this or that state. Thus he knows. And every time I read that quote, all of this joy pops up because this is the definition of nibbana. This is what it means to be free. This is why we're practicing. So letting go is essential to the path and how we go about embodying liberation. So when we're clinging, right, when we're trying to um, hold on to what feels good, or when we're trying to push away what doesn't feel good, what we're actually doing is we're trying to control and manipulate the external conditions to make things safe or easeful for us. Jack Kornfield talks about it as if it's like holding onto a rope. So the rope might be moving around and you're like holding on with all your might. And then you're going to get rope burn, right? I also really like the way that there's a little parable from Shanti Deva. Um, and so Shanti Deva is a sage, and so a layperson came up to him and said, you know, the world is really, really hard. And it's just so dangerous out there. And all I want to do is put leather all around the world so that everywhere I go, there's something soft to land on. And Shantideva said, well, you could do that, or you could just put on some shoes with a leather sole, right? And so letting go of the rope, right? Letting go of that rope is terrifying because we don't know if there are going to be leather soled shoes that we're going to have. We don't know what's going to happen. But we do know that holding onto that rope is definitely going to cause rope burn. So it's profoundly brave to let go of wanting to leather over the earth, of wanting to control all the external conditions. But also, it's kind of the only thing you can do because you're not going to leather over the earth, right? Or we're just going to sit there so grumpy about how the world is, which is again going to cause us a lot of suffering. So we can let go. So not leather over the earth or let go of the rope, whichever metaphor works for you. We can do that without disconnecting. So the goal isn't to be unaffected by life or apathetic about life. It's not like, whatever, I don't care about the rope or I don't care about the world anyway. It's not that. It's really important actually that we're affected by the world, right? Um, because we are. Something matters to us, and so we're impacted by it. You know, I'm angry because someone crossed my boundaries. That shows me that I care about myself, you know? I'm angry or hurt because I was betrayed. That shows me that I care about myself and this relationship. Care is important. So it's not about not being affected. The letting go process is really and truly about letting things be. It's about surrendering to this moment. And surrendering sounds like, okay, I'm just going to lie back and take it. I'm just going to be like a dog on my back with my belly showing, whatever. I surrender. Um, and it's not that. What it is just letting things be as they are in this very moment. So I don't know. Actually, this is what's happening right now. My friend came over to drop off a cookie, which was so sweet. And now I have a stomach ache because I actually can't. She gave me two cookies. I ate them both because clinging. And and I am 43 and I can't eat two cookies anymore, unfortunately. I feel sick. And there's a part of me that's going, it shouldn't be like this right now. When I was younger, it wasn't like that. So why is it like this now? Oh, there's something wrong. So that's clinging to this idea of youth and that things should stay the same, right? Uh, and it's just like, and can we find it? The compassion part is that I'm finding it quite adorable when I notice that, oh, that's what's happening. Oh, that's so sweet. Oh, honey. Oh, darling. That's so sweet that you think that it should always stay the same. Okay. So yes. So letting go is really about surrendering to this moment. Um, So it's not about like with the cookie example for example, I could easily go into I shouldn't have done that. Why did I eat both cookies? What's wrong with me? So like blame, aversion. Or I could have blamed my friend. Why would she bring me two cookies? She knows that I can't control myself. You know, we can easily go to these places. Or it can just be about, oh, stomach ache feels uncomfortable. I can feel some anxiety in my chest in response to that. Oh, I can feel like my stomach churning a little bit. And this way that I feel a little bit heightened because it's too much sugar in my body and it feels kind of like anxiety. That's what we mean by surrendering. And it doesn't mean, okay, from here on in, I'm just going to eat as many cookies as I want. It's not about that. It's just about feeling what's here, letting it be. So what we let what's here be here because we're deeply committed to aliveness, not because we're indifferent to it. Does that make sense? So it's like we're intimate with the state that's here. We don't get to choose what state is here, you know? It might be pleasant or it might be a stomachache because of cookies. But when we're intimate with every state that's here, that's the best attunement ever, right? We when we're upset and we call a friend and we're like, hey, can you listen to me talk about something? And the friend's like, you know what? I only want to listen to good things. That's not great attunement, right? Really beautiful. Like that's what love, self-love is to me, is attuning to every state that's here, whether it's pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And that's how we get free. So to do that, equanimity can be really, really supportive in the process. This mountain-like energy, this energy of I will not be moved. Whatever these states are, whatever's coming at me, I can hold it, I can handle it. And that's a whole other talk on cultivating equanimity, but it is important in the process of letting go. So how do we let go? Well, yeah, very easy to just say, well, just stop clinging, let go of the rope. But we all know what it's like when we're stuck on something, right? So a year ago, my now ex-best friend, but at the time was my best friend of like 15 years or something, broke up with me. And it was a horrible breakup. I didn't know what was happening. She just stopped talking to me and I had to keep bugging her to be like, can we talk about it? Can we talk about it? And she was just like, I just don't want to be your friend anymore. Without really any meaningful explanation. It was just horrible. Brought up all of my attachment stuff, all of my abandonment stuff. And it's been a year. And let me tell you how much I am holding the F on. Like, I've got rope burn 45 times over. I cannot let, it feels like I cannot let this go. I am really sitting in resentment and hurt and anger and betrayal. And I have so many interesting theories about it all, right? All these mental proliferations are like, this is why this happened, and just trying to make sense of it all, you know? And that's my body going, my body is ruminating because I'm wounded and it's trying to ease that suffering. Like, oh, of course you're doing that, body. That makes so much sense. And it's totally not helpful, you know? What has been helpful is just pausing and being like, oh, I'm in some big story about my unlovability or her um, callousness or whatever it is, you know? And then when mindfulness arises and shows me that's what I'm doing, I'm in the mental proliferation, I can then pause and come back to the body and go, what's it like in here? And guess what? It feels terrible, which is why I was mentally proliferating. So I didn't have to feel how awful it felt in here. So again, this is big, brave work of turning towards what feels terrible, you know? And a question that I ask in my practice when it's like that is, okay, anger, I see you, and I'm with that anger for a while. And then I will ask, I'll just drop the question in my practice, what's underneath this? What's underneath the anger? And then usually there's just really big sobs. There's grief, there's fear, there's so much hurt. There's a profound fear that I am just unlovable, that I've done something extremely harmful that I'm not aware of. There's just so many feelings that are much more tender than anger. And anger, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with anger, but it's often, at least in my experience of my own anger, is a defense so I don't have to feel these more vulnerable feelings. And at the crux of all of this practice, because I've been practicing with it for a year, I've been like at the kind of the kernel of it is, oh, she was my ride or die for so long. What am I going to do in this lifetime without my rock? How am I going to be okay without my rock? Very scary to be with uncertainty. And yet that's the crux of Buddhist practice, is to be with uncertainty. The fear was so big, I just didn't feel like I could feel it. And so I would try to stop it from flowing through by clinging onto my righteous rage. And I don't know about you, but my favorite thing to cling to is righteous rage. I had a student, a Dharma student of mine, ask me the other day, or like maybe a month ago, why do I like reality TV so much? And I was like, yeah, I really like it too. So I started practicing. I was watching Love is Blind, and I was like noticing, and I was just trying to notice in my body, like, why do I like this so much? And I noticed my attention was really focused and my body was leaning forward. And I'm like, oh, it's righteous rage. I'm just like angry for all of these women having to date all these, what to me feel like horrible men. And I can be angry at the patriarchy. And I can also feel superior because I'm queer and I have to deal with all this shit that they have to deal with. And I just feel bad. I'm just like, oh, I'm better than all this. But that righteous rage causes separation ultimately, right? And then I turned it off and noticed, oh, tranquility. Oh, that's actually way more pleasant than righteous rage, which I'll talk about that later about renunciation, about letting go of things that feel momentarily pleasurable in service of something that is a much bigger liberation. Anyway, I highly recommend reality TV practice. I'm curious what comes up for you. Um, yeah, if you can notice in your body what's happening as you're watching. Okay. Yeah. So righteous rage is my favorite way to cling. And you might want to notice that in your practice too, particularly when you're right, because you might be right, right? Like sometimes we're right. And then it can feel like a real place to be like, well, I'm right, so then I get to cling, instead of noticing, well, what does it feel like to cling, instead of noticing what it feels like to be right, but noticing the clinging part of that and how separate you feel from the world when you do that, how separate you feel from yourself. So the mind would rather be miserable in anger than be in the profound uncertainty. That's how scary uncertainty is. And yet that is the crux of the Buddhist path. Okay. So I was talking earlier about the mind as a garden, and we can weed the garden of greed, hatred, and delusion. So let's talk about all the tools that we can use to weed the garden. So the first, of course, is mindfulness. We get enough collectedness of mind, or what's called samadhi, so that our mindfulness becomes strong and clear, so that we can notice, oh, this is clinging. Oh, this is aversion. Oh, this is delusion. And when we can notice that there's clinging happening, then we can start this practice of letting go just by noticing. We notice, oh, there's clinging there. And then we ask ourselves, well, what's happening in the body when I notice clinging? Oh, it feels bad. There's often a contraction that happens when there's clinging. And just by noticing that contraction over and over and over again, the body starts naturally letting it go. And so it's not a mind process. It's not a like I'm thinking that I'm clinging, so now I'm going to let it go. I think that's why so many of us are confused about letting go, because it's like, well, I can't just let it go. It's so big and intense. But when our body notices again and again and again with compassion, with care, then the body naturally over time, over a very long period of time, I'm not saying it's quick, lets it go. Okay. We can also use some top-down methods. So that's like the main bottom method, is in using the body to understand, to have that embodied insight of, oh, clinging feels bad. So the body lets it go. But we can also use top-down methods. This right here, a Dharma talk, is a top-down method. I'm teaching you things. You're listening, right? This is often what people do in talk therapy. They talk things out loud. They get cognitive insights. So that's possible. When I like call a friend and I'm like, oh, my ex-best friend did this a year ago and I'm so mad. And then they remind me of impermanence. That's a top-down method. Okay. Renunciation. So I was talking about this earlier. We can renunciate the clinging. So by that I mean letting go of something that feels temporarily good, like righteous rage, and very consciously and actively letting that go in service of tranquility. So I can turn off the reality TV. It's hard because it feels good. But when I kind of toggle back and forth between turning it off recognizing that it feels better, turning it back on, recognizing that that feels good, but in a way that's unskillful, turning it back off, resting in the tranquility. So pendulating back and forth is a really fun way to play with your renunciation practice, right? So with the cookie example, for example, if I had just taken 2 bites and really paused and noticed instead of scarfing them down, I would have been like, oh, this tastes really good. Okay, but I'm done now. I'm satiated. I don't need to eat the rest of it because I'm going to renunciate that for the sake of being well enough to give this Dharma talk, right? So we can actively choose to let go of something. And the beautiful thing about being in this practice is you start learning over many years how beautiful a practice, renunciation, or in Bali it's called nekkhamma, how beautiful that practice is. It's initially it can feel like I'm letting go of all these things. Buddhism is so like sad and so like letting go of all of this sense desire. Why? But over time you start seeing how it's in service of something larger. Okay. So, with my friend, with this conflict with my friend, what I've been renunciating is allowing myself to rehearse conversations. So, I know we all do this, right? You're in a fight with someone, even if it's like the fight ended 3 years ago, and yet you're still somehow rehearsing, right? You're in the shower, you're washing your hair, and you're like, okay, if I were to see that person at the bar, this is what I'm going to say to them, right? We all do this. It's just this way that we're trying to leather over the world, right? I'm going to try to control it by endlessly ruminating about the thing. So human, like so, yeah, I have a lot of tenderness for it, but I'm actively renunciating it. So sometimes I don't notice. I can go for a whole day being like, and then she said this, and then I said this, and then she said this, and then I said this. But eventually, a moment of mindfulness will arise. The light of awareness will shine on my mental proliferations, and it'll be like, oh, I'm doing that thing. Okay, I love you. I see how you're trying to protect me, and I'm going to go do something else. And I will go focus all and when the mental proliferations are strong, sometimes the breath isn't enough. Sometimes I need to get up and I need to fidget with something or like hold my squishmallow. Partly for comfort, but partly just so that I can have more sensory input so that I'm noticing more things. Does that make sense? So that I'm not just trying to do it with my awareness alone, but being like, what does this feel like? I'm going to go for a walk and look at something else. So it's not actually distraction. It's just being aware of more than just the mental proliferation. Okay. So yes, letting go of the rehearsals for a larger liberation. Okay, so that's weeding the garden, but we can also plant seeds. So let's do a little exercise together. Um, so you're going to, oh, I'm sorry, there's light on my face. I didn't realize that because I'm not looking at me. Um, There's light everywhere. I can't change that now. Okay, it is what it is. I'm sorry that this is maybe distracting for you. Okay, so we're going to play with our fist a little bit. So you're gonna make a fist and make it as tight as feels comfortable. Not comfortable, sorry. You want to challenge yourself. Um, so making a fist. Oh, sunglasses emoji, yes. Okay, so this is us holding onto the rope, right? And I want you to try to pry your fist open with your other hand. Then we'll rest and just notice what you feel in your body. Okay. And then we'll make a fist again. And then your other hand is going to act as the hand of compassion. And so we're going to place this fist in this hand and just notice what happens to the fist. And then resting. I'm curious to know what that was like, and I'm also giving this Dharma talk in the I'm just riffing all over the place, and I'm like, oh my God, there's so little time, and we haven't even done a practice. So, if you want to type in the chat, how that was for you, I would love to know. Or also, I will try to leave a little bit of time at the end so we can have a little debrief because I would love to know how that was for you. But the idea here is that compassion is the way, right? So often we're trying to rip those onion layers off, but actually just this compassionate noticing, this compassionate holding allows the fist to unfurl, allows the onion layers to peel off. Yeah. Okay. So that's compassion. Then we've got generosity. That's another seed that we can plant. We practice giving things away and we practice expecting nothing in return. Because if we've given everything away, then what we can't cling to anything. There's nothing to cling to, right? This primes the mind to deeply understand impermanence of what's mine. And that really challenges our very sense of ourselves as solid and permanent, which is beautiful because we're not solid and we're not permanent. My favorite teaching on this was a personal teaching that I got from Joseph Goldstein, who said when I was talking to him about my own profound emotional stinginess, I was at that time, this was a long time ago, but I was like, I just, I was really like caught up in this was before the term emotional labor, but that's what I was caught up in was like, I only have so much energy. How much energy can I give? And he was just like, give it all away. What's the worst that's gonna happen? And what he said to me was, anytime you have an impulse, even for a millisecond of an impulse around generosity, follow it all the way through. The first moment that arises, immediately follow it all the way through. Do not think about it. Do not try to analyze if it's the right thing or not. Just follow it all the way through. And that piece of advice has completely and profoundly changed my life. And I have never, not once, ever regretted following it through. So somebody's homeless on the street and the impulse is to give them money. I will dig into my bag and find the change. And never once have I missed that change, or the friend that I call because they're having a hard day or whatever it is. So again, an opportunity to try that. I welcome you to try it and see if it works for you. Okay. And then um, another way that we plant seeds is through the Maranasati meditations. So that translates to the death meditations. So I've been a little bit obsessed with the death meditations. I'll tell you why in a minute, but one of the chants that the Buddha asked us all to chant every day um, goes like this. I'll just read you the lines instead of chanting it for you. I am of the nature to age. I have not gone beyond aging. I am of the nature to sicken. I have not gone beyond sickness. I am of the nature to die. I have not gone beyond dying. All that is mine, beloved and pleasing, will become otherwise, will become separated from me. I am the owner of my Kamma, heir to my Kamma, born of my Kamma, related to my Kamma. Whatever I shall do for good or for ill, of that I shall be the heir. Thus we should frequently recollect. So the first time I did this chant, which was maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I was like, oh, what a bummer. Similar to the word dispassion. I was like, what a bummer. And now I feel such deep joy about it because I'm deeply understanding that everything is impermanent, including our very lives, allows for something, allows me to cling less because I have this deeper sense that everything could end tomorrow? So letting go of resentment as best as we can be really helpful. I mean, the thing is like what we're actually terrified of when we're terrified of uncertainty is that moment of death because we truly have no idea what's going to happen. So we've organized our lives in a way where we're like trying to avoid dying when we know it's an inevitability, it's going to happen. Okay. So plant the seeds with gratitude, with these frequent recollections of dying. One of my other new favorite practices I've just been doing in the last couple months is Same with it's another death contemplation, is taking my skeleton for a walk. So really actively contemplating, like, I am just bones, I am just bones. And one day those bones will return to the earth. And so I'm going to go take my skeleton for a walk. And I'm just noticing the bones in my body as I walk. And then I contemplate them returning to the earth. And as I've been talking about so much today, like so much of this work is about attunement and about intimacy. Can I be intimate with this very moment? And can I be intimate with the earth? And like, what's more intimate than being with the earth and literally returning to the earth when you die? So can that be a celebration? Can that be a celebration of intimacy? Okay. So what are the fruits of letting go? What happens when we let go of the rope? As I'm saying, intimacy with aliveness, with this present moment, instead of being stuck in something, in some future thing or some past rumination about how someone should have been nicer to me or kinder to me or whatever it is. Letting go creates space for being present in this moment and not being so outcomes focused. So here's a story about being intimate in the present moment. Um, so my mom, so the reason why I'm obsessed with death meditations is because, oh my gosh, I'm really trying to figure out this light thing. Okay. So I am obsessed with death meditations. I can't figure it out. Because my parents are elderly and they don't live in the same city as me. So they live in Toronto and I live in Vancouver, and they're elderly, and it took a really long time, like a really long time for us to have a good relationship, which I can now say we do. And now that it's good, I am terrified that they're going to die. I think about it obsessively. I dream about it obsessively. It's my number one nightmare. I'm just obsessed. And so I was like, great, it's time to be steeped in death meditations. Like, let's go, let's turn towards what's terrifying. So last year, my sister called me and she was like, so mom probably had a stroke. Her face is paralyzed on one side and her body is now paralyzed. And I was like, okay, I'm going to the airport right now. Like, I'm getting on the plane. And she was like, slow your roll. We have no idea what's going on. Just stay put. You just stay put. And so for a week, I was just pacing back and forth, waiting to hear news, hearing things sporadically. And it turns out my mom had Bell's palsy. So she actually didn't have a stroke. It's kind of like a temporary condition, where there's a temporary paralysis. And so a week later, I fly to Toronto. And so I'm sitting there with her and I'm fawning over every little thing she's doing, right? She's eating something and I'm like, what are you eating? Is that good for you? Should you be eating that? Is that a thing you should be eating? And she's just like, okay, you're being really annoying. And I was like, okay, you went to physiotherapy. So what did they say? What are the exercises? Can I help you with them? Just being really quite controlling. Um, and so after I did this for a few days, my mom was actually really quite gracious with me in the middle of an medical emergency for her. And she stopped me and she said, you're really afraid that I'm going to die. And I was like, yeah, I'm really, really afraid. And she's like, do you know what I do pretty much every weekend is I go to my friends' funerals because I'm in my 70s and that's what we do. I am practicing, I mean, she didn't use these words, but what she was basically saying is I practice dying every single weekend because this is the stage of the life that I'm in. I am ready to die. One of my grandkids is going to university. I'm good. I've lived a good life. She's like, all of this is your shit. Your profound fear that I'm going to die, that's on you. And my mom was saying to me, hey, please stop leathering over my life. I'm going to eat what I want to eat. I'm going to do what I want to do. Stop controlling me with your worry. And I was like, oh, yeah. And so I paused and I felt into the fear and I felt into the anxiety about really wanting to fix things and not being able to, and how stuck I felt in that. And I just kept feeling and feeling and feeling. And then I like reached over to my mom and I said, I'm really sorry. I don't want to control you. I don't really know what to do with these big feelings. And then we just held each other for a little while. And she was just like, I'm gonna die. And I'm like, I'm really scared, but yes, I do know that. And what I felt in that moment of surrendering was intimacy, right? Intimacy with myself, but also with my mom. So these are the fruits of letting go by not pushing away uncertainty and the fear of impermanence. I was able to have a connection with my mom in that moment. fear and contraction, the contraction in the body that steals away our intimacy. Okay, we have 8 minutes, which is not enough time for a practice. I am so sorry. I always leave time for a practice, but I just started riffing and stopped paying attention to my notes, and that's not always a good idea. So I think what I want to do is for the next 5 minutes, just practicing silently and just noticing impermanence in the body. And then there'll be just a few more minutes left to read what's in the chat and have a few questions. So turning your attention inwards. And again, noticing the earth. Being with what's here, as I said earlier, is brave. And so it's important that we get support. Support from the earth. And then support from the anchor, our breath that helps us be here now. And just noticing if there's anything in the body that you might be able to let go of. So it might be some tension in the jaw or the root of the tongue, or maybe the shoulders are up by the ears. And what we're doing is we're just noticing. We're not going to pry the fist open. We're just going to notice. Oh, this is what this tension feels like. Noticing with kindness. Noticing what happens as you attune to yourself. Maybe finding another place in the body where some letting go might be possible. And getting curious about what are the sensations of tension here? How do I know that this is tension? And if it helps, you might want to place a hand, that hand of compassion around the tension, not to make it go away, but just so that it knows, oh, you're being supported right now. Thank you so much for your kind attention, both to me and to yourself. Deep bows for your practice. Okay, we've got 2 minutes left.